Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sharon Megdal. I'm Director of the Water Resources Research Center, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's WRRC Water Webinar, the Santa Cruz, a river of transition and hope. And this is our first webinar of this academic year, so we're excited to get going again with sharing important and impactful programs and information with you. I do want to mention that, or ask that you please keep yourselves muted. We will have time for some question and answer after the presentation. Please enter your questions using the chat function. I will monitor those and go to them during the Q&A part. This will be recorded, and the recording will be posted on our website, and those registered will be notified when the recording is posted. That's usually done within a day or so. And I want to mention that this webinar, we go for about 75 minutes for 15 minutes after the top of the hour, the next hour. But we know many people have to leave at top of the hour for other meetings and so forth, but we can go as late as 15 minutes after the top of the next hour. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of Indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the O'odham and the Yaqui. The university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and Indigenous communities through educational offerings, partnerships, and community service. I do want to bring your attention to some of our upcoming events. We have a webinar in less than 2 weeks now on an overview and update of Arizona's general stream adjudications. That's a really important topic, and I'm looking very forward to understanding more about the status of these very complex legal proceedings. And then we have a co-sponsored event hosted by the Udall Center for Studies in Public Policy with Brad Udall. Got an intriguing title there, which I'll let you read. And then a few more coming up in October, and we even have some planned for November. The best way to keep up to date with things is by subscribing to our weekly wave. You can also go to our events page anytime. And please remember to save the date, April 14th, 15th, for the WRRC annual conference, which will again be held at the U of A Student Union with non-interactive free live streaming. So more will come on that in a little bit. But let's get to today's program, which I know will be both interesting and beautiful. It's really my pleasure to introduce Luke Cole, Dr. Luke Cole, who's director of the Santa Cruz River program at the Sonoran Institute. Luke joined the Sonoran Institute in 2018 and manages the ongoing projects on the Santa Cruz River, working with staff and collaborators to restore and enhance this living river in the heart of southern Arizona and northern Sonora. Prior to joining the Sonoran Institute, Cole worked for the Washington, D.C. city government, tracking the district's green infrastructure and water quality improvement programs with a focus on coordinating tree planting programs and policy. Luke has a PhD in environmental sciences from the University of Virginia, an MS in oceanography from the University of Rhode Island, and a BA in biology from St. Mary's College of Maryland. And Luke, I don't know if you remember, but I think we met very soon after you joined the Sonoran Institute at a conference up in Phoenix, probably right around that time. So anyway, since then we've gotten to know each other very well, and so grateful you accepted our invitation to give a seminar, and I'm going to turn it over to you. I'll come back after you're done. You said maybe 45 minutes or so. And
I'm going to set my timer right now.
All right, thanks.
That works. Thank you, Sharon. And thank you, everybody who has tuned in. Ooh, we just crossed the 100-person mark. Very happy for that. My name is Luke Cole. As Sharon kindly introduced, I'm with Sonoran Institute. We're a conservation nonprofit based here in Tucson. And while we work throughout the entirety of the Colorado River Basin, we're based here, and our Santa Cruz River is here, and I get to direct our program that affects this community that I live in. It's really exciting. And as I'm pulling up my slides here too, I also wanted to note, as you saw, my background is in East Coast marine biology. So for those of you who are in grad school, know that your understanding of the natural world is far more transferable than you could ever realize. The fact that I'm a saltwater Boston kid who is now sort of working on this desert river, it just continues to boggle my mind. And you have that flexibility in your world as well. Okay. Are we seeing my screen? Okay. Slides are coming through.
They look great, Luke.
All right. All right. So let's jump in earnest. So this really is a river of transition and hope. And what I want to do is sort of go from this river's fascinating history, take us up to present day, um, policies that have crafted the river as it exists now, and where we may be going in the future, and how you can get involved. So I'm going to have this map a couple times throughout the presentation. So don't need to screen grab it, but screen grab it if you want to. So this river is fascinating. The headwaters of this river are down in the San Rafael Valley, which are south and east of where at least I am here in Tucson, where the river's traditional flow path would have gone from the San Rafael Valley down into Mexico, where the elevation table kind of tilts westward towards Nogales and then tilts northward up towards Tucson and Marana. So this river's path crosses the U.S.-Mexico border twice. Fascinating in and of itself right there. And then its flows continue north and northwesterly. At least its flow path continues north and northwesterly. Down in what we call the Nogales reach of the river, down around where it says Nogales International. This is where there is a wastewater treatment plant called the Nogales International Wastewater Treatment Plant that today releases about 15 or so million gallons a day, creating more or less 15 miles of river flow. My light goes off constantly. Then the river's more or less dry from the Pima County, Santa Cruz County line until you get into downtown Tucson. It's dry because it is a geologically deep vadose zone there. The bedrock is quite shallow up in that Nogales reach of the river. It's also quite shallow up here in Tucson. That stretch in Green Valley where that dotted line continues is hundreds of feet deep to bedrock. So with the given volume of water that will percolate through our sandier soils, we lose that water underground. Lose. Big quotes around lose. So we have these three wastewater treatment plants, the Nogales International Wastewater Treatment Plant, the Agua Nueva Wastewater Treatment Plant, and the Tres Rios Wastewater Treatment Plant, the latter of which service Greater Tucson, and the Nogales International Wastewater Treatment Plant 80 to 95% of that water comes from Nogales, Sonora, and the remainder of it comes from Nogales, Arizona. This river system continues to provide a vital and extremely rare wildlife corridor. We have east-west, north-south connectivity. We're bounded by mountains on all four sides of this river valley that contains critical jaguar habitat, that contains any number of threatened and endangered species like our beautiful Gila top minnow, the Mexican spotted owl, as well as plant species like the Pima pineapple cactus, and plenty more. So I'll come back to this throughout the presentation, but just want to ground us with where we exist now. On a larger scale, we are, more or less within the Sonoran Desert. And this puts in context the importance of this river as you're considering it as a wildlife ecosystem, right? Like this system has species that are endemic to it, plant and animal, throughout the entirety of the Sonoran Desert. And Tucson is sort of on the margin of that, which produces a rather interesting and complicated assemblage of species. Now, this river has provided for this region for, millennia, and certainly before we ever got here. It has some of the oldest records of human habitation in North America. We have over 12,000 years of documented human existence here in the Santa Cruz River Valley. And on top of that, we have the great distinction of being the oldest and longest continuous agriculture in North America, Tucson. And that is because the Santa Cruz River, when it would flow through its natural flow regime, it would flow northward, it would come into Tucson, sort of hit right around Martinez Hill, just a little bit south of Tucson, and that river would do that thing that you read about in your history books when you were in elementary school. It would overtop its banks, it would deposit water and nutrient-rich silt that became the foundation for agriculture. And that history of agriculture, 4+ millennia, remains continuous here in Tucson. As we acknowledged in the land acknowledgement at the beginning, we are in the land of the O'odham, as well as today in the land of the Yaqui and the many smaller tribes who were not necessarily officially recognized by the federal government, but again, giving us a sense of our place here, not only ecologically, but culturally. It's beautiful here. I hope that there are some folks who are tuning in who may not be familiar with this area of the Sonoran Desert, but where we live is a beautiful place. It has provided for people, as I've been talking about, and it does so in really spectacular fashion. So much so that some of the early illustrators who had a okay idea of what a saguaro cactus looked like were able to really capture the greenery of what Tucson had looked like prior to, Manifest Destiny, the larger Anglo-colonial push that occurred out here in the 1800s. Right, we are seeing in some of these illustrations a lot of green, right? We're seeing a lot of trees. Of course, no buildings or minimal buildings, but what we had here was a system that provided plenty of water, plenty of grounds for agriculture. And this image here, though from 2009, is clearly putting these two people up more or less on top of Sentinel Peak, a mountain, looking sort of east-northeast. The Santa Cruz River would be right here along the bottom in that sort of gravelly area. Then we start to move a little bit more into modernity. Here we're starting to see the University of Arizona, some other buildings cropping up, and a lot of agriculture. This is a lot more familiar looking agriculture to what we were seeing in this earlier slide, right? There's no distinct land here set aside for agriculture. Granted, it's an illustration, but as we move towards modernity, we're getting more of the sort of European, sort of anglicized agriculture, block plots, specific crops, things like that. And this is really what people saw, experienced, took advantage of as we had that push out here from the East Coast in the 1800s. So in this Manifest Destiny push, you had wave after wave after wave of people coming out here, seeing a flowing river, seeing people growing crops, right? Seeing communities in existence without the knowledge of, current day hydrology. It seemed like it was an oasis, right? An oasis that would provide. So what these folks did was they grew as much crops as they possibly could. They established communities wherever they could, which is what began to accelerate the drawdown of the Santa Cruz River. Right, more of those similar types of crops, fewer trees, right? That's what we're starting to see over time. This picture here is from, our image here is from 1904. And as is this one. So here we are still looking at a flowing Santa Cruz River. These images were pretty typical of what people would be experiencing, particularly during the winter and the monsoon storms. But this is right around the end of when those perennial flows ceased. So right around 1915, the perennial flows in downtown Tucson dried up. We still had reliable enough rainfall in the winter and in the summer that the river would flow, but we were pulling a lot of water. We were diverting and pulling a lot of water out of the Santa Cruz River for agriculture and for human growth. To the point that by 1915, the system went bust. Then by around 1940, those winter and summer seasonal flows also ceased. And what we were left with was a dry riverbed aside from when we had storm events. So what was particularly effective at drawing down the Santa Cruz River was the invention of these steam-powered groundwater pumps. Prior to that, people would dig a well, manually pump that water out as they needed it, and that was the use. But with the advent of combustion-powered pumps, what the colonial Anglo folks who had moved out here brought out those pumps and realized that mesquite is a fuel strong wood. So they felled the great mesquite bosque, a lot of the existing standing tree stock to power these groundwater pumps, which further accelerated the drawdown of the Santa Cruz River, right? So it really sped up this process. And that overdrafting is what turned the Santa Cruz River from a gaining stream where the aquifer was at the surface and feeding the river to a system where the aquifer had drawn down far enough that the river was now feeding the aquifer, net feeding the aquifer. So here's another example of how this works. So just with the existence of any well or well field, even in flush systems, you're going to get this little bit of a cone of depression. Um, but that is ultimately still feeding the stream. But once that cone of depression begins to reverse the direction of flow, it starts to pull water out of, in this case, the Santa Cruz River. And then eventually, as it continues to pull, or as these wells continue to pull, it severs the visible surface and aquifer connection. I'm getting a little bit of a click. I'm going to mute somebody, see if that fixed it. Okay. So here's what brought us to more or less modern day Tucson. Now, the system has not just been left for dead, which is wonderful. And it's really what a lot of the work that Sonoran Institute does, and certainly our many partners do, is to demonstrate and showcase just how this river system is still alive. But before we got to that point, after we drew this river system down, left it dry, then we started building our wastewater treatment plants, which were only functioning at secondary treatment. So the wastewater that was being treated and released into the Santa Cruz River was of really poor quality relative to today's standards, to the point that the river stunk. Apparently, you could smell the river as you were driving. You could smell Tucson by way of the Santa Cruz River as you were driving in from Phoenix. You knew you were home because of the smell of the river and of the treatment plants. So those wastewater treatment plants were operational for decades until we got ourselves into a real state change that occurred in 2005. And this was down in that Nogales reach of the river. So this wastewater treatment plant, the Nogales International Wastewater Treatment Plant, in one form or another, had been operating in Rio Rico or in the city of Nogales for decades. But in 2005, there appeared to be more or less like a coral bleaching event, but of big cottonwood trees right along the river. The river was flowing along this stretch. And at the time, Sonoran Institute researchers and researchers from the University of Arizona went down and investigated this and were kind of stumped. Like, how the water's right there. These trees are feet away from the river. How are these trees dying from dehydration? And what we found was that the nitrogen load coming out of the Nogales wastewater treatment plant was so high that it was forming kind of like a biological cap on the riverbed that was allowing the water to flow downstream, but it wasn't percolating down into the riverbed where the trees' roots needed it. So it was the definition of it being tantalizing, right? We were so close to it, but these trees were unable to access that water, and they reached that breaking point to the extent that these trees died off on about an 8-mile stretch of the Santa Cruz River in what appeared to be overnight. So alarm bells started ringing. What is happening? It's the wastewater treatment plant. Well, those can be upgraded. And that's sort of what took us into the policy and technology driven phase that has created today's modern Santa Cruz River. So In recognizing that the Nogales International Wastewater Treatment Plant could be upgraded, the investments were made to do that in 2008 and 2009, which is when the Nogales treatment plant's current form with tertiary treatment, where that nitrogen is denitrified from the wastewater and it just blows it off into N2 gas up into the atmosphere. So that stretch of the river has been flowing clean now since 2009. And Sonoran Institute and our partners reported on that, and we showed, hey, you know what? This really works. Look at this river system recovering to the point that Pima County, with its Tres Rios treatment plant and the predecessor of the Agua Nueva treatment plant, performed those upgrades and builds in 2012 and 2013 when those stretches of the river started to receive very clean water coming out of Agua Nueva and Tres Rios. Again, they instituted tertiary treatment where denitrification stripped a lot of that nitrogen out of the water, meaning that when it was released into the Santa Cruz River, it was of much, much better water quality. And while there is more to this story, I just want to note that in 2019, City of Tucson, working with Pima County, they rerouted some of the wastewater coming out of the Agua Nueva treatment plant back upstream, and they released it, creating what's called the Santa Cruz River Heritage Project. And today we continue to have a wetland that we are constantly hopeful will be expanded into steady river flows, but it's right between Silver Lake and Star Pass. So it's just upstream of the base of A Mountain. That's why it's called the Heritage Project. This is where the river used to deposit its water and its nutrient-rich silt, which is really something to celebrate. And all of this was done with the basis of good field science, good data analysis that informed policy, that informed infrastructure improvements. It's the best. And here's what some of these treatment plants output. So this is the Agua Nueva wastewater treatment plant right by Sweetwater Wetland. If folks haven't been there, check that out. And all of a sudden, you have this outfall of really clean water into the Santa Cruz River, and this ribbon of green starts. And it's amazing the effect of this clean water. To the point that today, what we have are 40, more or less 40 flowing miles of the Santa Cruz River split between the Nogales reach of the river, and then that small Heritage Project site, and then the river's flows from this outfall by Sweetwater Wetlands, like by Prince Road, all the way up and into Pinal County, in this good, high-quality flowing water. But to do this, we needed to be good science communicators. So we, in 2008 or so, started creating what we call today our Living River Reports. So these are a catalog, and we started this once, in advance of that die-off of trees down in that Nogales reach of the river. But we, working with researchers and field scientists and people familiar with this area, came up with about 15 or so indicators that are monitored year after year after year in both stretches of the river, the Nogales stretch of the river and the Tucson stretch of the river. And those data that are collected, we have now every year since the creation of these reports have been putting it out into the community in a very readable, now bilingual report that we can share with this community. They are geared toward a upper elementary school reading level. So anybody who's interested in this report could read it. It's a great teaching tool. It's a great tool for people on the go, like policymakers who may only be able to have 2 minutes to look at something. This report here is that a perfect tool for doing that. So we've been putting this report out since 2008 or so in the Nogales reach of the river, and 2012, 2013 in the Tucson, Pima County reach of the river. And it's a really important tool. It's beautiful. And if it's not in the chat now, would be a good time to drop it in there. The new versions of this each year come out for Tucson at the end of this month. At the end of September, we'll have the 2025 edition. And then for the Nogales reach, that will come out, probably late November, at some point in December, somewhere around there. And these Living River reports are a massive and really enjoyable undertaking. So I always have to give absolute due thanks, and you continue to impress. So Claire Zugmeyer, who is on our staff here, is sort of the mastermind to our Living River reporting. Um, Pretty much throughout the entirety of the year, Claire is working to work with partners, analyze these data, write these reports, write these magazines to be shared with our larger community. Just the Tucson report alone, the whole purpose of it is to talk on the terms of the water year. So here, that's October through September. It captures the winter rains, it captures the monsoon rains. So we're not splitting it, by a weird fiscal year or by the calendar year, which would interrupt potentially some of the flow regime and precipitation regime that we get here. So we're always looking back by a year, but we're also always collecting data for the year to come in the year that we're in today. For the Tucson report, I won't go through that table down the bottom, but Sonoran Institute is sort of the lead and partner coordinator. We work with Pima County wastewater, flood control, environmental education, the city of Tucson, including and especially Tucson Water. The University of Arizona is central in collecting a lot of the raw data, particularly around the heritage project reach of the river. We get data from USGS, we get data from NOAA, and we've started to really look into community science in the form of, eBird, iNaturalist, and community groups like our amazing partners down in Santa Cruz County, Friends of the Santa Cruz River, who are certified to collect water quality data for the state. So all of these entities together, and sorry, I should say the very last part, people respond to calls to action. So we will oftentimes put surveys around usership of the river and things like that. So people just taking surveys is providing us with some data that we can analyze and include in subsequent copies of the report. And there are 2 versions of this report that come out every year. It's a monumental effort, but it's really a service to the community. So what sort of data are we talking about here? At a baseline, this gives us a sense of what the different volumes of water on an annual basis are that we are looking at for both stretches of the river. So the Nogales reach of the river, this amount of flow creates about, like I said, 15 miles. And then for the Tucson Pima County reach, that equates to 20 to 25 miles. So the overall water quantities are quite different because we're dealing with a effluent dominated river system. This is where there are more people living in greater Tucson than there are in ambos Nogales. Now, I talked a lot about the water quality coming out of the wastewater treatment plants. And this, for folks who have taken any sort of aquatic chemistry course will understand that ammonia and nitrogen really does drive the response throughout the trophic cascade. Wastewater treatment plants today here in Tucson and down in that Nogales reach of the river, any treatment plant that's been upgraded, it's usually like 0.5, maybe to 2 milligrams per liter. And when you're in that range, you are, under the Clean Water Act, under most states' water quality standards for nitrogen, ammonia, you are within attainment. You are providing for aquatic life within that reach of the river. Prior to the upgrades, though, we were looking at something like 13 or more milligrams of nitrogen per liter as ammonia, um, with excursions sometimes as high as like 30 milligrams per liter. So this river system was cooked before these treatment plants were upgraded. And this right here, like this slide alone can really tell the story of what kickstarted the sort of revitalization of the Santa Cruz River as we know it today. All right, this is what are they called? Causal variable, right? Now we can start to look at response variables. Who's using the water? Prior to the upgrades to the treatment plants, we were seeing fish in the Santa Cruz River. They were non-native and in some case invasive or introduced, like the western mosquito fish. But pretty quickly, and we continue to still see all of these species when we do fish surveys every November. But we had a glimmer of hope at one point where we had a longfin dace that appeared, a native fish appeared in one of our annual fish surveys. And then in 2015, everything changed. After the Nogales reach of the river had been upgraded 2008, 2009, by 2015, during one of our fish surveys, we found a fish that sure looked like a Gila top minnow. And after working with the University of Arizona and Arizona Game and Fish to do some identification, we confirmed that it was in fact a Gila top minnow. Now, these fish are on the threatened and endangered fish species list. They are extremely pollution sensitive. So for better part of a century, they probably had been washed down to the Santa Cruz River from higher mountain pools where they were able to contain some population stable, wash into the Santa Cruz River, but conditions were so bad that they weren't able to survive. Now we were starting to see the Gila top minnow, which became a very exciting sort of drive to further research this response variable of high quality water. Then we introduced the Gila top minnow in 2020, right? Okay, conditions look good. We had this heritage project. This is right downtown. The heritage project site was looking positive. We were starting to see the Gila top minnow also in the northern stretches of the river here in Tucson and around Marana, and conditions seemed right. So there was a big relief in 2020. Among everything, we're able to introduce the Gila top minnow, which continue to thrive in downtown Tucson. And then a couple of years later, we reintroduced the longfin dace, which is a whole other lecture, and I'll just sort of leave it be here for now. But this is what we do. We track these data year after year. These are great response variables to that, again, high quality water. And what we're seeing is that the Gila top minnow and its cousin, the western mosquito fish, which was introduced, their population numbers vary year after year. They're kind of wobbly because this is a managed system, not a natural system, right? But still with that, we are seeing the recovery of an expansion of habitat and abundance of the Gila top minnow, at least down around Tumacacri. And then at the Heritage Project site, like I was just mentioning, the Heritage Project site saw a huge spike in the Gila top minnow, and it remains almost certainly the highest population of Gila top minnow probably in the world. But again, owing to the fact that we're dealing with managed river systems, like things that are man-made and man-managed, things can go weird because it's not natural. So in 2023, we saw a really sharp drop in the Gila top minnow. Still trying to figure out what the driver was for that, and we have some data coming out really soon that will show what the populations looked like in 2024. I said I would show us the map again. Here's just the map to kind of get ourselves reacclimated. So in this Nogales reach of the river that was upgraded in 2009, the Gila top minnow were rediscovered in 2015. Then the Agua Nueva and Tres Rios treatment plants were upgraded in 2012, 2013. And then the Gila top minnow was rediscovered during our fish surveys in 2017. In the Heritage Project, water was reintroduced in 2019, and we were able to introduce the Gila top minnow then in 2020. But that's not all the story. We have this whole section between the causal variable of good water quality and some of these response variables in the forms of fish. We also have aquatic invertebrates that live the majority of their lives in the water. Here I'm talking about dragonflies. Dragonflies and other aquatic invertebrates that spend all or most of their life cycle in the water, they also need really high quality water. And hooray for Tucson and for the Santa Cruz River, under the state of Arizona's Index of Biological Integrity, we're no longer impaired, we're uncertain. And I'll take that all day long over impaired. This is saying that the location, the abundance, the diversity of aquatic invertebrates is improving over time. It's very encouraging. We are starting to see species that are obligate to the Santa Cruz River, but don't spend their life cycle in the water, like the southwestern synchronous firefly that appears to be thriving along the Nogales reach of the river. You can go down to the Nogales reach of the river under certain moon cycles, after specific monsoon cycles, and see tons and tons and tons of these beautiful fireflies. And Tumacacri National Historical Park has been running trips about that. Bobcats, these large, charismatic megafauna, now we're moving up in the trophic cycle, they are using the Santa Cruz River. Some of them like the ones that live on Tumamoc Hill and Sentinel Peak, are dipping down to the river real quick and coming back up. But as you go a little bit farther up towards Marana, we're seeing that there are bobcats that are living and traveling all only within the Santa Cruz River. We're also tracking how storm events affect the river, right? We had the clogging layer way back when we had the bad water quality, but when the system stays really steady, right, really steady flows day after day after day, because it's a human managed river system, fine particulates can start to clog up the riverbed. So when we get big storm events, it will help to really wash out some of that surface flow, and allow for more groundwater infiltration, or more surface water infiltration into the groundwater. We also have some water quality concerns. E. coli is a major concern along the entire stretch of the Santa Cruz River. We have this ribbon of green. It's a beautiful success story of rehabilitation and restoration. And that's also where all the animals are, right? So the animals are living in and along the river. They defecate, that gets into the water. It's not a result of the wastewater treatment plants, particularly up here in Tucson. It is more a issue of wildlife. And in this Nogales reach of the river, there are oftentimes breaches of the wastewater infrastructure that does result in some human-sourced E. coli that comes into the river. That does pop up occasionally, but everybody's working on it. And I spoke to this as well. Flooding really does help churn the system up. You get more groundwater infiltration, which also means less flow downstream. And then there are external events, like when we had the big fires in 2020. Remember, we didn't get any rain in 2020. Then when we got those rains in 2021, all that ash that had been high up in the watershed all flushed down into the river. It clogged up the riverbed with like a kind of a black cloggy layer. But what we were able to see was that those monsoon storms, where is it? Those monsoon storms churned that all up and were pushed it downstream, distributed it, and allowed for more flows. And I just want to take a quick moment here to pause on the Santa Cruz River Heritage Project. This is that site in downstream Tucson. This is a managed, introduced, controlled location. That beautiful water coming out of there continues to flow in one form or another. This is where the Gila top minnow are thriving, and it really is a model of science meets policy meets infrastructure. Along those same lines, some of the things that we like to report is that there's a new pedestrian bridge. People use the loop. People love the Santa Cruz River. And this pedestrian bridge, which just opened up just south of Sweetwater Wetlands, allows folks to move from the east to the west side of, or I guess in this case, north to south side of the Santa Cruz River. It's a good public safety thing, but it also is a really beautiful testament to usership and interest in the Santa Cruz. And this is what we have in our backyard. It's impressive, it's beautiful, and it's very, very exciting. For those who have not been out to the river, I highly encourage that you do. You can just go as far, you can go up to Mission Garden, or even if you go by the MSA Annex and grab a drink at Westbound or something like that, you are so close to the river. And we have plenty of other ways that you can get involved because we have an activated Santa Cruz River community. We're in the process of trying to establish a Santa Cruz River National Wildlife Refuge that has gained the unanimous support of the San Javier District of the Tonatom Nation, of Pima County, of the city of Tucson, and of Santa Cruz County. Despite everything, we have a letter of support from Governor Hobbs as well. Despite everything, we are continuing to make progress on this because we are doing so with a major Santa Cruz River Refuge coalition. So if anybody is interested in this, check out santacruzriver.org and join the 50 plus people and entities who are in support of establishing this Santa Cruz River National Wildlife Refuge that would afford federal recognition and federal protection of this river. We have river cleanup events all the time now. And as a scientist and as scientists within Sonoran Institute, we are collecting data when we are doing these river cleanups. The image that you have here is from a river cleanup that happened early 2024, where we had 350 people come out to the Santa Cruz River. This is at Verdugo Park, so folks are aware of like where the Tucson is. just a little bit farther south of like the MSA annex that I was mentioning before. It's a great little pocket park in there. People assembled and they got motivated. They understand what we're doing, why it matters for the Santa Cruz River. And we always have a goal of just let's work for 2 hours. Let's pull 2,000 pounds of trash out of this river. And that's what we do. So here are some of the data that we've been collecting basically by weighing the bags of trash that people collect, monitoring the number of volunteers that we have, and totaling the amount of trash in our 7 Sonoran Institute led trash cleanups that have occurred since early 2023. We have pulled over 11 tons of trash out of the Santa Cruz River. And this is only between like that Heritage Project site and Grant Road. And there is so much more work to be done, which is why we're inviting you on October 25th to come on out and join us for a Santa Cruz River cleanup that will be happening up around Grant Road. It has some great sponsors already attached to it, and we're hoping to have a nice happy hour at Dragoon Brewery, which is right by it afterwards. So please, please, please pop this on your calendar and keep an eye on Sonoran Institute's social media. Speaking of, we are now in the midst of Santa Cruz River Dragonfly Festival. This started as a one-day event in 2019 where we brought people out to the river for one tour up around Marana, and so many people came out. So that the next year, even though it was COVID, let's do Dragonfly Days. We'll do 2 events over the weekend, which then grew and grew and grew until today. We now have this month-long Dragonfly Festival. So the link for the festival is in the chat. We have tours of the Santa Cruz River happening on September 20th. Actually, that one's full. It's in Santa Cruz County, but we have lots of tours here in Tucson on September 27th, including some bilingual tours. We have the Sonoran Sachet, which is a drag and burlesque cabaret, Dragonfly. That's happening at Club Congress a week from Friday. That's September 12th. On September 17th, we're doing an event at the playground where people are invited to come get a meal, get some drinks, and we have researchers from the University of Arizona who study leaf hoppers, who study dragonflies, who study other critters. They will be giving brief presentations. It allows you to interact, socialize, be comfortable in a sort of a restaurant bar setting so that you can learn more about the Santa Cruz River while also being in a nice, happy, easy, comfortable spot. Also, we're doing virtual lectures supported by Pima County on the life cycle and sort of hunting techniques of dragonflies throughout the month, plus a whole lot of other things. So please do check out that link. We have so many activities going on, including a BioBlitz. So folks who are using iNaturalist, we're trying to get people to get images of dragonflies so that we can track them, both their location and the species and abundance. So that sort of community science is critically, critically important. We also host a monthly sort of environmental happy hour, basically. So these are for environmental leaders, people looking for jobs, people who are looking to grow their environmental community, not just the Santa Cruz, but beyond that. But what we do third Thursday of every month at Moto Sonora is we invite a different researcher or entity who is related to this ecosystem that we live in to give a little 5, maybe 10-minute presentation, bring some handouts and swag, and allows people to just sort of mingle and get to know one another. It's free, it's fun. They have plenty of NA options at Moto Sonora now, as well as a couple of good food trucks. So please come on out and catch up with us later on this month. And with that, I just want to thank you all for your time. Really grateful for this opportunity and encourage you all to look into what Sonoran Institute does. The Santa Cruz River program is one of 4 programs that we have, and there is so much activity happening throughout the entirety of the Colorado River watershed. We're doing more and more work along the US-Mexico border through our Growing Water Smart program. We have a huge program at the delta of the Colorado River where it used to connect into the Sea of Cortez, Gulf of California. We and other nonprofit groups down there are working tirelessly to with partnership from the University of Arizona, working constantly to dredge, to plant plants and trees, do all the research on this river system to justify further, additional flows up from the Colorado River to try to make this connect to the sea again, as well as our work that we do with our tribal partners, again, all throughout the entirety of the basin. That's my presentation. So grateful again for this opportunity, and I hit my 40 minutes almost to the second, Sharon. I'm very, very proud of myself.
You were good, Luke. Great presentation. So informative and beautiful photos and pictures and very clear explanation. We do have a couple of questions already in the chat.
Great.
Ben, I'm going to ask you, do you want to make a announcement quickly, or can you raise your hand? We usually do this through the chat, but I'm going to call on you to see why you raised your hand.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Sonoran Institute for all the wonderful work they've been doing, especially Luke Cole and Claire Sugmeyer. I just got an email from Claire that we're getting ready to do the Researchers' Days again, so very exciting there. The work on the Urban National Wildlife Refuge is something we're all very eager to come to fruition. I did want to add that there's a small amount of effluent that goes to the Nogales International Wastewater Treatment Plant from Rio Rico.
That's true.
And we pay Nogales, City of Nogales, who then pays IBWC for whatever reason. It's not a direct payment. The trees, the cottonwoods, are typically a response to entrenchment. When the river starts down cutting, nature has a way of slowing things down, and the trees are a response to that. Friends of the Santa Cruz River monitor water quality, but we also monitor flow. We actually measure flow with a meter and a rod, so we report that every time. We believe, and maybe Luke, you can answer, that the Gila top minnow resurgence was probably due to some flooding that came down Sonoita Creek from Cold Springs. And the other thing is we may need some help with the cleanups down here now. We've all gotten a little bit old and not as energetic as we were. So that's it for me. Thanks
All
for
right, Ben.
everything.
Thanks so much. And are you still serving as chair of the Friends of the Santa Cruz River,
I'm
or
still president of Friends
president?
of the Santa Cruz
Okay,
River, and I chair the IBWC Citizens Forum down here.
right. So no,
We
that's
just had to
great.
reapply for that, by the way.
Oh yeah, they do those
2 years
cycles.
are up.
Oh yeah. So you'll have to
Thank you both.
reapply. Ben, no, always good to see you. And Friends of the Santa Cruz River have done great work for many years now. So glad you're keeping it up. We do have some questions, but I want to mention that
Thanks, Ben.
just thinking about the cleanup, and that when I was over in San Diego this summer, we do our usual zony thing for 10 days or so right by the beach. And there was a group out one day that it was an NGO sponsoring beach cleanup. And there were a
Yep.
whole bunch of people with their blue bags picking it up, and all that. And so it's great that you're doing that. So
And I should also note on here, Sharon, it is hardly Sonoran Institute out there as the ones doing this. There is a trash cleanup happening on a tributary or the main stem of the Santa Cruz River every single weekend. So we have Tucson Clean and Beautiful. We have any number of neighborhood groups, Students for Sustainability at the university. People are getting engaged. And if you are interested, as Ben noted, there are Santa Cruz County cleanups that are happening. And then up here in Tucson, Tucson Clean and Beautiful is your resource. They are contracted with the city and the county to support river cleanups and tributary and neighborhood cleanups. So don't hesitate to reach out to them if you have like I said, fraternity, sorority, church group, scout troop, whatever your thing is, they provide you support. That's Tucson Clean and Beautiful.
that's
We're
great.
also looking eagerly towards working with you very closely on trash interception devices that we can come up with, because a lot of it comes down Nogales Wash and
That's right, Ben.
big stuff that is not easy to handle, but we're looking forward to working closely with you on innovative solutions.
We'll
Yeah,
get it. We'll
that's
get it.
great. So I tend to go in questions in the order they come in, and sometimes I need to maybe ask for clarification or whatever. But so I'm going to go back to a question that was asked kind of when you first started. And this is one I think a lot of people have, and this is from Caitlin Tyler, wondering about any projected impacts created by the border wall construction in the San Rafael Valley.
Yes, of course, right? I mean, this is not within, despite I talked about it for probably 5 minutes, like we don't tend, Sonoran Institute doesn't tend to do a whole lot of work yet or for a while on that particular like stretch of the river. Um, What I can tell you though is that our friends at the Sierra Club, our friends at Borderlands Restoration Network are very highly versed and have made excellent statements on what they see as the potential or likely impacts of the border wall. So I would point you towards them for a much more comprehensive answer. But just what I've seen so far, right? The heartbreaking images of coyotes and bobcats and mountain lions trying to get through that stupid wall and like not being able to get through, like the impacts are present. um and on top of that, given the trash like Ben was just talking about that is crossing the border and debris that happens during storm events, like that backs up, it changes the flow regime of these streams and the river systems. So it's quite consequential, but I again would suggest that you talk to the people in the know um, to get that information. Hope that's not too much of a push off, Kaylin.
No, honest answers are always the best answers, so that's great, Luke. Interestingly, we have a physical oceanographer on the call I did a little side conversation with Sandra. She's actually in the Netherlands.
Oh wow.
She does some work in South America, and her dream is to come to Arizona to do some things. So another kind of ocean person. I'm sure there are many out there connecting to the desert. And so I gave Sandra my email address. I'm sure, Luke, she can contact you with any questions and so forth. So Sandra,
Absolutely.
please be in touch.
We'll do the secret handshake.
Our good friend Holly Richter had a question, which also is one of those on
Yeah.
people's minds about PFAS.
Yep.
And how do you address the public concerns about PFAS and other emerging contaminants in effluent discharge?
So there are a couple different angles on this, Holly. In the immediate sort of water quality concerns, the city of Tucson is all over PFAS and a lot of those other contaminants of concern. Um, while it is the case that wastewater treatment plants are, because they collect wastewater, right? That's where a lot of the PFAS and similar contaminants are coming from. They're coming from the sewage because they're coming through us. Um, and they're concentrated, right? Because that's what happens at a wastewater treatment plant. Those levels of PFAS, given the quality of treatment that the city of Tucson and Pima County and the Nogales treatment plant are doing, while they are higher than natural background levels, they are barely higher than natural background levels. So there is more PFAS in effluent than there would be probably in a given naturally flowing river system. But just because it's higher, we're not talking orders of magnitude or logarithmically higher. We're talking, linearly, slightly, possibly multiplicatively higher. So they are concerning. They're because we're finding them everywhere and in everything and in concentrations that are uncomfortable and dangerous given the more that we learn about it. But within the river system itself, the fact that these response variables throughout the entire trophic cascade do seem to be thriving is indicative of, that these PFAS are below threshold levels that could be causing any sort of significant concern. And I'm definitely on a little bit of a reach here, and I know that there are other researchers who at the university who do work on PFAS and water quality, but talking with my sewage brain, that's about the best I can offer.
Thanks, Luke. And I'll just note for those who may have come on a little later, We go till 15 minutes after the hour if the questions continue. We know we lose some people on the hours. You have other meetings to go to. We will post the slides and recording for this. So if anybody wants to catch up on, what's covered in the last 15 minutes or so, you can do so within about a day or so. We'll have that posted. So just continuing on with some of the questions here, Torrin Anderson, like many, thank you for a great presentation. Lots of thanks and kudos in there. And he asks, what are your thoughts on K-12 educational opportunities about the Santa Cruz River? What has been successful in reaching these age groups? What are the key takeaways young students should know about the Santa Cruz River?
That is such a solid question, Torrin. Yes. Good news is that, or excellent news is that the county has a fantastic program called Living River of Words, right? So we're working on this river is alive, this living river concept. The county's Living River of Words program is an educational sort of living classroom experience that's based on sciences and the arts. So what they do is they work with schools within the county and within the city to bring these kids to the Santa Cruz River for art, for journaling, for, basic science courses that gives them the experience with this river system that their parents couldn't have and their grandparents maybe had, right? So there are municipally guided programs underway that are working within the river. On top of that, I think that you should feel comfortable in reaching out to Sonoran Institute and like the WRRC to see where there are opportunities for classroom related education for K through 12. Like I said, our Living River reports, they're geared for a like upper elementary school reading level. So they are perfectly appropriate for that age range, as are, with the exception of our Dragon Burlesque show, like all of our Dragonfly events that are happening throughout this month are like absolutely K through 12. These river tours that we're doing on the 27th, that first year we did it, and every year since, there has been a grandparent, kid, grandkid cluster in every single one. People love it. Kids love it. And it's a really good family and educational opportunity as well. The major takeaways, please, everybody, this river exists. It's worth visiting, and it has so much to offer. Because we had 75 to 100 years of disconnection from this river, from its flowing reaches in Tucson, to then it was dried up, to then it was polluted with pretty rotten sewage, right? Like, think how many generations from 1915 until 2013 there were where people were like, who cares about the Santa Cruz River, or avoid the Santa Cruz River. There is no avoid the Santa Cruz River anymore. And I think that that's a really important thing that everybody needs to know. And if we can get to kids on that, all the better.
Yeah, that's great. And also at the WRC in our same building is Arizona Project WET, and there might be a
Right.
question posed to them about what they're bringing in they train the teachers to bring things into the classroom, and so so much interest. Just yesterday I gave a talk to the Tucson Rotary, and they have as part of one of their programs is children's literacy, and they had me sign a book called The Drop. They didn't give me the book so I could read it. I just signed it because it was being donated to whomever in the honor of my speaking there. And the point is, there's just lots of children's books around water and so forth. And if there's not, I can't remember, Luke, if you said there is one focused on the Santa Cruz River or not, but maybe someone wants to do a children's book, bilingual, whatever.
Yeah.
I also want to put a plug into the Dear Body of Water project of the Poetry Center. And excuse me, I'm forgetting the name of the woman who created it. And there's the opportunity for people to go online, look up Dear Body of Water, and just write a snippet, write something to the body of water you care about, and so forth. And they're collecting it and analyzing it. And it's a really nice way of bringing in people to connect with poetry and other things. And you don't have to be a poet. You can just say, I love the dragonflies at the Santa Cruz River. And that would be a very nice thing.
Yep.
So lots of things going on. There's a question from Portia. Harmon, how does the treatment of the effluent that goes into the Santa Cruz differ from the purple pipe water? Is there any areas of concern that you guys are still researching how to address? So two kind of related, but maybe.
Yeah, good question, Portia. It's the same water. So that water that comes out of those wastewater treatment plants, the majority of the highly treated effluent goes into the Santa Cruz River. The remainder of it goes into the purple pipes. There's some final chemistry work that's done sometimes in like stripping out some of the chlorine before that water goes into the river or as it comes out of the purple pipes onto school ball fields and municipal golf courses and things like that. But for all intents and purposes, it's the same water.
Could I interject here?
By all means.
There is, and I'm not the water quality expert, and maybe there's someone from Tucson Water on here. But before the water goes in the purple pipe, they are doing additional treatment through recharge and recovery. So they're taking some of the water, and actually it's even more complicated now because of some PFAS issues.
Right.
I wish somebody from Tucson Water, if you're here, raise your hand. You know, John Cleve talked about this when we did my graduate class field trip out to Sweetwater. And I'll notice Paul Strong, who's a former student, mentioned he saw a bobcat at Sweetwater Wetlands. So that's a little scary to me because I don't expect to see bobcats there when I go there. But they do recharge it, and so it's getting some additional soil aquifer treatment, or there may be some additional. The point is, though, Luke is absolutely correct. The water that comes out of the treatment plants is super clean water, super quality water.
Yep.
But there's still additional, as I understand it. Don't go to the bank on what I say here because I'm not the expert. So anyway, Luke, sorry for the interruption.
No, you're right, Sharon. I mean, it is it's not even close to as like cut and dry as I was trying to lay it out, but it is originated from the same source for sure. And there are sort of those fining large scale and small scale before they go into the pipes and then into the river as well. And related to sort of areas of concern, and then the subsequent question about like data centers and things like that, that's a big area of research. I won't quite put it into like concern level quite yet, but this water is really clean, right? Like this is what Sharon and I are sort of like nibbling around the edges of how extremely clean is it? It's extremely clean to the point that direct potable reuse or advanced water purification, whatever the term is, this water is pretty close to, or at least is adaptable for reuse for drinking water. And as we continue to have more and more shortages from the Colorado River, which is where Tucson pretty much gets all of its water from, we are going to need to look to our larger water portfolio to understand and maybe consider where can we get more water here. The Santa Cruz River, the application of that water into the Santa Cruz River, it's paying off dividends, right? It's an economic driver, it's an environmental driver, it's a research driver. But things like major water consumers who can function not with potable water, but with near potable water can look to the reclaimed water system as a possible source. And that was likely what we are or were dealing with the sort of questions about the data centers. And that's an interesting facet to me. I think that's a driver for more water conservation. Water conservation practices are so much cheaper and more effective than some of the major carbon using super expensive technologies that exist, like desalination, for example, that can create new water, right? But that come at quite a cost. Water conservation that we're doing here at home already really well here in Tucson, more of that is cheaper and more effective.
So Luke, to follow on, and I see you went ahead, there are a number of questions that were related to the whole, what you just addressed. But I think there's also, I didn't re-look at all of them, but there's also the question of having less water flowing in the river
Mhm.
because there's more demand for use of that treated wastewater. And so is that something, and I'll ask the question if it wasn't already asked. I know it's the concern of some groups, it has been for a long time, the loss of the water flowing in the river, for which those who own that effluent are getting credits. Those are permitted recharge projects,
Right.
managed out for recharge. But do you, Sonoran Institute, have concerns about just the quantity of the flow over time? Are you worried about these uses pulling it from the river?
Yes, we have to be. But what we can do is use our publications, our outreach, our knowledge base to give people as much information about what this river, how this river system is generated, what it, what it does and what the benefits are, to give a broader swath of the population a better understanding of what we would stand to lose. Let's provide people with the information that the city, county, and researchers are collecting so that they can make their own informed decisions.
Yeah, yeah. And in fact, Michael Carpenter's question was related to that, about preventing data entities such as data
Yeah,
centers
yeah,
taking your river water, and then in contrast, groundwater, it's not quite a prior appropriation because it's there's ways to put in new wells and still take it from others. So we'll not get into the legal aspects of groundwater here. That's a little bit beyond the scope of today's. But we do have William O'Brien, who's on behalf of the town of Patagonia. He says, we're concerned about long-term water balances with development and know that Sonoyta Creek carries our water into the Santa Cruz. Do you have long-term water budgets that show the Sonoyta Creek credits to the Santa Cruz River?
Um, that's not anything that we have actively done in my 6.5 years here at Sonoran Institute. Not to say that that hasn't been done before, William. So I'm curious about that myself. And if anybody on the call has any resources on that, it would be good to know. I'll note on that, though, I spoke of some of Sonoran Institute's other programs. Our program called Growing Water Smart, that's been doing more and more work along the border and throughout the entirety of the Colorado River Basin. They work with municipalities to sort of better understand and equip them for those very specific types of water challenges. And we're hopeful to bring that down into Santa Cruz County within the next year, year and a half. So that could be an excellent opportunity to give the municipal leaders and water managers a chance to really tackle a question like that.
Okay. Again, there are a number of questions about Project Blue. It was asked if Sonoran Institute has a position on it and so forth, but I'm going to go. And Laura Norman says she sees a bobcat every time she goes to Sweetwater.
Oh yeah.
And anyway, I don't go there that often, but I haven't seen a bobcat yet, but I'll be looking for it next time.
They're there, Sharon.
I'm sure they're there. I mean, them. So, and this is also related. So I'm not sure it requires an additional response that Michael Carpenter also asked, what happens to your flow when toilet to tap becomes implemented? And
Yep.
again, I would encourage people to number one, look at some of the Tucson water resources on this. There was a lot that was said when Tucson Water recently was talking about their advanced water purification. In fact, we hosted a seminar April 11th where we featured Tucson Water, Phoenix Water, and Scottsdale Water, all talking about their advanced water purification. The different name, people don't like using toilet to tap as the name for this, the moniker. And so that's recorded if anybody wants to look at that. John Kamik just made a presentation in early August to mayor and council on reclaimed water. And I know they may be gearing up, I think they may be gearing up to do a new master plan on reclaimed water. So this is high on everybody's minds. And you know, we're all a community here that we want to keep informed and share information so everybody's informed. So it's a matter of kind of just sometimes looking at some of the resources, and some of these questions are good because they help us at the Water Center figure out some of these things that people are thinking about. We have 5 minutes left, and there's still a couple more questions here. So I'm going to skip over Kathy's question about person at Project Blue said that we were thinking poorly of recharge water because it is so clean. I'm just going to offer that generally in our water community and our broader community here, we like recharging water, and so I think I'm going to pass over that because it may have been an incorrect statement to begin with. Taylor Simmons, I've been thinking about you. I haven't seen you since you went to work for Tucson Water. She used to work for us at the Water Center and got a master's in public health a year ago spring. And then she says, oh, thank you. She's saying it's correct. I'm just looking at her message now. I work for Tucson Water. And then she's talking about the A+ treatment and then the water discharge. So take a look at Taylor's comments. Thank you so much. I'm glad somebody from Tucson Water is here to comment. Oh, she dropped off, so she probably didn't hear me.
Yeah.
So I think, Luke, do you see anything that we didn't cover in the questions? Because I know you've been glancing at it. Do you have any final comments? I know that Jacqueline and Jesse have been talking to
Yes.
people can find the signups for various things. So I think we'll get that covered. Anything you'd like to say as closing remarks?
I want to, again, thank people for your time, and also to recognize how monumental the work that's happening at the University of Arizona on water research, water policy research. It's critical, and we could not do this work without the high quality of research, of graduate students, of undergraduate students that have really driven a lot of the work that Sonoran Institute, and I'd say this larger community, has done. So really my hat goes off, and my thanks goes off to you all, because you do the heavy lifting. I'm part of a team of 3. And it is with these sorts of partnerships that we have that allows us to produce the products, to have the events, and have the conversations like this that we wouldn't otherwise be able to have. So my most professional and personal gratitude to the university and to you all.
Well, and we appreciate your being here, and you do, like you say, those beautiful reports. There a lot of work go into that. They're really great. We don't have as many people in the lobby like we used to before COVID. We still have some, but the reports would always go. People just love those reports, and we always appreciate your dropping them off.
You get them.
And that fact that you still print some as well as post
Oh, yeah.
them. So
They go to press today. They're on press as we speak.
all right. And then there was a clarification was by Kathy saying what she was saying was we should not be selling off our recharge water
Oh,
cheaply, as it is really good water. So I think we
agreed.
agree on that. That's that it is really good water. So anyway, thank you, Luke. Thank you for all who joined us, and we'll see you. I hope many of you in less than 2 weeks at our next water webinar. Have a great day.
Take care, everybody. Thank you. All right.